And now,
it's 10 a.m.
let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'll explain to you off the air, Ben, but that was easily the most David James moment ever right there. I love DJ.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, although I'm struggling with my headphones here.
Mine was weird, too, for a second, and then it kicked in.
Well, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Whatever. Ben, can we start the show now that we have pleasantries out of the way?
Yeah.
I want to start the show with some show pause business.
Okay.
Have you been hearing the promo that's running with our call-in feature?
I haven't.
So apparently on the KSL Sports app, this is more than apparently, it's confirmed, it's there. There is and we can go through this, but there's a button, a call-in button that you can push. And then you can
record. Was it a 60-second?
I think it might even be longer than that. It's 60 seconds, and you can record whatever.
Yeah.
Now, I've been doing talk radio for a while now, and I've seen the evolution of something that I've tried to push back a little bit against, but let me explain. So, the call-in radio show was popular for some reasons, okay? It was popular because there was interaction, and people like to hear their voice on the radio, and it gave ownership to shows and made it popular because the one thing about audio and this medium is people really identify in a different way than TV say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much more personal because there's more time. You feel like you know people better because I think if I would make an argument that I believe that people feel like they know David James more because of his time on the radio than his time on TV.
Yes.
If that makes any
sense.
It's just a different type of connection. And then when you add interaction to that, it gives listeners ownership of the show. And that, I think, is a key component in success of sports talk shows.
Yes.
Sports talk radio.
You have to speak the language.
Now, nobody makes phone calls anymore. I called Maddie this morning. I think she was shocked.
Yeah.
Who is this?
Who's calling me?
Old man who's calling me. By the way, she's so cool. She's like, we needed a small bit of help today, and she's like, yeah, happy to do it. And she's on it. But anyway, I called her. And point is, nobody makes phone calls anymore. We used to have texts, here's the thing. The other thing with phone calls is, and some radio philosophers will tell you that, one, it was a huge wild card, which it absolutely was. We probably should have been canceled for one particular prank caller that got through time after time. And Ajay kept leaving him, like, on the air.
Yeah.
Disaster. So huge wild card and a lot of times a waste of time because not all callers are created equal. And listen, I came from an era where we took a lot of calls and public speaking just isn't everybody's business. But you know what? You can do a quick funny thing and record it. Well, my point is we had text for a while and that went. I disagreed with that move, but whatever. I lost that battle, and that was like 10 years ago, so who cares? I was met with the argument of people on social media or specifically Twitter can interact with the show. Well, how much of our audience, people actually listening, what percentage are on Twitter?
Small.
Extremely small.
Yeah.
And to interact with someone on social media or on Twitter, those people don't have to be listening. And it's not immediate. And part of what differentiates us, being a live over-the-air radio sports is we're live. You want the latest? Tune in to Jake and Ben.
Yeah.
That's part of the magic of it all. So I feel like that's been lost, certainly here in this market. I don't claim to be an expert on others, but no show interacts anymore.
Okay.
I mean, even interaction on Twitter is basically gone. And I think it leaves something lacking. Now, as we continue to develop this show, I feel like this is something interacting with our listeners more could be a priority and something that sets us apart. And this new tool, this call-in, I think could be really valuable to our show specifically.
Okay.
Now, in the past, we've had something like this and it totally failed. Not totally failed because I'll give Hatch and DJ and PK some credit. They used it pretty well. But it didn't really get off the ground. And I think it didn't get off the ground for a couple of reasons, Ben. One is our fault and one is not. Our fault was we didn't make a big enough deal of it, and some people didn't totally buy in and realize its usefulness, and I'll include myself in that. And we didn't get our listeners into the habit of doing it and then they stopped because you want to hear it. And
it requires proof of concept.
It does. You want to hear it. You're doing it because you want to hear your voice on the radio. I get that. It's part of what makes this medium truly magic, in my opinion, and why I love it so very much. Is I do. I love the interaction with listeners. You know me, Ben. I'm an interactive guy.
Yes, you're a people person.
And so, I think if we create some good habits, and look, Christian is a new producer. This is his first full-time show. And we can build good habits and monitor this thing and put it to good use, in my opinion. So here's the way I want to start. And I need our listeners on this. Very simply, download the KSL Sports app, open it up, hit the call-in button, and then hit record. And it's going to send it to our system here.
Yep.
I was talking to Maddie because we've got to get the Christian access to the system. But
Sure.
Hatch has access and he's here, so we're going to try and use it. It goes straight to Christian in the producer's room, and then we'll probably do some editing. I mean, here's some tips.
We'll clean it up.
We can't play like 60 seconds. People don't think is a lot of time. It's a lifetime in radio. So
Yes.
things, if it gets shortened or stuff like that, don't be offended. We'll probably do that to most of them. And if you really want to get heard, keep it brief. Like keep that in mind. So I want to use this thing, and I want to use it today. Can we do an exercise? Can we
Try and get one done
people
today?
in the habit of doing it? And I have an idea.
Okay.
Well, actually, let me add in a component, and then I'll get to the idea. All right. I don't want to forsake our beloved podcasters. So, and I think that this tool can be used in multiple ways. I think we can use it to build segments if we get a good one, even if it's responding to something from a couple of days ago.
Absolutely.
But I thought we've got to develop a bit so that podcasters can identify that they're podcasters. And tell me if this is too inside baseball, but I think inside baseball is cool in the podcasting world, right?
And a midday radio show actually makes up for, allows for a little inside baseball.
So Christian if you're podcasting, you could be sending it in during JJ and Alex or Hans and Scotty or middle of the night. It doesn't matter. But we have to differentiate it from the other shows. So I was thinking our beloved podcasters could start their call-ins with, you just have to address Christian in some way. Like you could say, dearest Christian, like make it
Sister Christian.
Directed at Christian.
Yeah.
Beloved Christian.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. And I think it'd be funny if our podcasters got creative with how they addressed
Christian specifically.
Christian specifically.
Okay.
So to tell the other producers on the other shows, this isn't for you.
This is not for you, Jeremy.
This is not for you, Lloyd. Not for you, Hatch. This is specifically for Christian. Hey
I
there.
like it.
Hey there. This is for Christian.
I like it.
So podcasters, latch onto it and listen. We'll listen to them, and we'd love to build segments around them or include them or whatever. And we realize in today's day and age, you can't always be listening live all the time. So we don't want to forsake our beloved podcasters. So when you do this, say, hey there, Christian, beloved Christian. I don't know, whatever.
Sister Christian. Yeah, whatever it takes.
Yeah, whatever you want to do, just make sure you address it to Christian.
So you download the KSL Sports app, which is really easy. Not KSL News Radio, KSL Sports. And then the bottom left-hand icon, you can see it. One of them says home. The one right next to it says call in. You click call in. It says, do we have access to your microphone? You say yes. And it's got a big blue button in the middle. You push the big blue button, you record. And then you can submit it. Very easy.
So here's the exercise I want to do today.
You have a prompt for people?
Yeah. And this is our listeners. We need you today because after talking about this for 10 minutes, this cannot flop or they'll probably fire me.
Okay.
So this is how we're going to get in the habit. We're going to do this. We're going to give payoff. Here's the thing. All right. How long do we have in our final segment?
Not very. 5 minutes.
It's like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that. I will give the listeners this. We will fill all 6 minutes with you, or as much as the 6 minutes as warrants.
Do you have somewhere to be at that time?
No. I just don't want to bleed into Hans and Scotty. I want to give our listeners plenty of time is my point.
Absolutely.
Like we're not going to,
we're not
play a second of it. No, we're going to probably edit them down a little bit.
But dedicate.
And put them back to back as long.
No response?
Well, we'll respond after.
Okay.
We're just going to play. That's what I'm saying. Our response is not important.
Okay.
I'm giving it to the listener. And maybe if this works, we can do it more. But we'll play them more for sure. But maybe if something like this specifically works, maybe we can do it more. But we used to have a thing, which I always thought was funny, but it wasn't funny forever. And it was Kevin Graham's idea. It was called the Whiner line. And we had an answering machine set up to a specific phone number, and people could just call in and complain.
Yeah.
And it was really funny for like 5 times. And then it ran out of steam. But it was really funny. So I figure I always bag on the complainers, even though I am one. Give us your complaint. Knock yourself out. Complain about whatever you want, whether it's traffic or the weather. Now, listen, if you curse, we're not going to use it.
Of course.
If you're gross, we're not going to use it.
Of course.
If it's inappropriate, we're not going to use it. People know where the line is. So don't cross it, or else we just won't use it. That's the other nice thing about this is you can't prank call
a call-in.
A call this call
recording line,
and make it onto the radio like some bozo did with Ajay years ago. Oh, and so you know what? It's not Ajay's fault because we got out of the habit of taking calls, and screening calls is like one of the very first things you used to learn. And believe it or not, prank callers are very easy to snuff out.
Yeah,
but not if you've never done it before, or you don't have any practice at it. But anyway, keep it clean. Honestly, the best ones are short. Keep it brief, and complain away. You and I were complaining to each other just a few minutes ago about our children. Complain about your kids.
Okay.
Complain about traffic. Complain about Ben.
Complaining about our kids.
Complain away. The more creative, the better. So download the app if you haven't already. Call in button.
Bottom left-hand corner.
Bottom left-hand corner. Record.
Address Christian.
Not only if you're a podcaster. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Only if you're a podcaster.
If you're listening live, if you're interacting with the show live,
okay,
you don't need to address Christian. That is secret code for our podcast listeners.
Okay.
If you are a podcaster,
glad you clarified that.
Address Christian. If you're just a normal interact live with the show, because I want to use both, then you don't need to address Christian. But yeah, if you're a podcaster and you're listening in the morning and I don't want it usable on DJ and PK. We want to keep them for Jake and Ben. So address Christian. This is not for you, Hatch. This is for Christian. And we'll play that, and it'll be our signal to the podcasters that we love you.
Great.
But now we're interacting with the show live. Send it in. You don't have to address Christian.
You feel like we don't have our finger on the pulse of our listeners? Enough?
Meaning?
That's why you want this interaction.
Oh, no, I think it's great content.
Okay.
I think it's great content and a great way to... I don't care about the pulse of our listeners. No, I want I want their opinions. I want their voices. That's what I'm saying. I want people to have ownership in the show. I think it builds a
community. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at.
Let's do it.
We don't want to ignore you. We love you. And I'm not so arrogant to think that my voice is the only one that matters, which other people do. But that ain't me.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's you either. So I want to get this thing off the ground. So complain. Please, complain.
Or whatever. Celebrate.
Complain.
You don't have to complain. It could be a good thing.
Well, that's the bit, is the complaining.
Oh, well, whatever.
The whiner line wasn't about celebrating, Ben. It was about complaining. That's the bit.
Okay.
I mean, if you got a sports take, we can mix it in, I suppose, but you're not making it into the last segment of the show.
It's just about complaining about life.
Or sports.
Or sports.
Or Ben. Or Christian.
Okay.
Or Lloyd.
Okay.
Oh, I could send. I'll send
so
one.
So you want. Yeah, or Jake.
Or me. Well, yeah. Fine.
So we want to end the show on a negative note.
Absolutely.
Every day.
No, not every day. Today.
Going into DJ or going into Hands and Scotty.
Today, just to get it off the ground. Today.
So we can leave work on a sour note.
Ben, it should be hilarious. Why are you backing on it?
I'm complaining.
This is oh, okay. Actually, I'm behind. Yeah, I get it now. Zing, right over my head.
Yeah.
No,
great.
but what do you think?
Let's give it a shot.
What do you think?
What do we have to lose? Other than our jobs.
Well, yeah, again, we're not going to, like, the prank caller, that's how you lost your job.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
That's how. You put Val Hale on hold for 30 minutes. That's how you lose your job.
Try things. I'm pro trying things, so we have the opportunity to try something. So, yeah, let's do it.
And I like that about our show. And plus, I don't think Maddie, Nate, Lloyd, et cetera, would hate that we are using the tools that are given to us.
Utilizing the technology.
Yeah, right. So let's get on it. But we need our listeners' help, and we need their input in today complaining. Send them in. All right. We'll get to sports coming up next. Sorry, that probably took longer than it should have.
22 minutes?
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's like an eternity. Whoops.
We were talking to people about how your cut can't be 60 seconds long.
Yeah, and I just talked for 20 minutes. Well, whoops. Send them in, please. KSL Sports app. Call in. Let's get in the habit of it. I want to use it. I want to interact with you listeners. So send in some stuff. Don't make me look dumb. More next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Are so lucky we didn't get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah, not great.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I want to remind you about Win Ticket Wednesdays. Your chance to win big every week on the station. Listen all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. Time for the top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com. Brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. 2 locations to serve you. One on Winchester Street across from Fashion Place Mall. The other at Traverse Mountain in Lehigh. All right, Christian, where are we starting today?
Number 1, Keyonte George was named to the all-rookie second team.
Looked like a front-runner to be all-rookie first team. In fact, was kind of high in the rookie rankings for the first half of the season. And after the All-Star break, just never really came back. He had that big 9-3 game against Golden State going into the All-Star break. And I just think his legs gave out. And, he stopped playing with Lauri Markkanen because Lauri sat for most of the second half of the season. And he had a very difficult close to the year. But still, all-rookie second team for the Jazz. That's an honor. There's only 12 Jazz players ever have made an all-rookie team, so it's a good sign.
I do not believe that the all-rookie team is any sort of predictor of how good your career is going to be.
It is not at all. It is not a precursor of your talent.
I don't think that this is a big deal.
No.
I think it's a big deal that he played and he got experience, and now what do you do with that play and experience? Because not all rookies get that opportunity. He got it, and so what are you going to do with it?
I guess I would rather your rookie make it than not make it. Scoot Henderson didn't make it. That's a bad sign because Scoot also got the same opportunity.
Well, it was a bad sign that they drafted him.
I mean, he just didn't play well at all.
Yeah, he's tanks. He's little.
Right. He had a lot of issues. So you would rather your guy make it than not make it. And in that sense, for the Jazz, you look back at, what is this young core going to look like? And there's a lot of question marks, but Walker Kessler made the all-rookie first team last year. Keyonte George made it this year. Ideally, that's a representation that at least early on in their careers, they're off to a good start and they're playable NBA players and you want to hit on those rookies. But like you said, it's not a precursor to anything. And I've always said you would rather have the best third-year player out of the draft than the best first-year player out of the draft,
well, of
right?
Course, yeah.
Yeah, so let's remeasure this in a couple of seasons, but you would rather Keyonte have played well than been a disaster, and I don't think he was a disaster, but I do think his last 30 games of the season gave pause to a lot of Jazz fans.
Well, yeah, because it was never their opinion of him was never really realistic in the first place. So it's not like anything changed with him. They just realized that he was a rookie and he's not there yet.
Yeah.
But you make it. I get what you're saying about you'd rather have your player on it than not. I understand that. And you're obviously correct. But what if Scoot was on the second team all rookie? Would that change Portland's perspective? Because Portland right now needs to be freaking out that this guy's gonna be a total miss.
Yeah.
Like a total miss. Now he might just be late to the game like all these other G League Ignite game players that take like 3 years to develop but eventually get there. Maybe that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's still not out of the question.
Right, of course.
But there's a good chance that this guy makes Markelle Fultz look like John Stockton.
Yeah.
So that's what they're. But my point is, if he would have made it to the second, been named, given that title, would it any lessen their panic? No way.
No. Well, to this point,
who cares?
if you're a Jazz fan and you're a believer in Taylor Hendricks, do you believe in him less today because he wasn't named to the all-rookie second team? Of course not.
No.
It doesn't change how he played. It doesn't change the memories you have. It doesn't change the block shot on Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson
Or the
potential. Threes he made.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you get named to a list, again, you'd rather make it, I guess, than not make it. But it doesn't mean you need to, A, believe in your guys more because they do or believe in them less because they don't.
I mean, I love it that we're bagging on Portland a ton in this segment. But what you don't want to be is Portland, who took a chance in drafting Jermaine O'Neal. And he was a 7-foot, multi-skilled, but very young player because he was straight out of high school while you could still come straight out of high school. And Ben, he sucked
Yeah, he was
in
bad.
Portland.
Yep.
He was so bad. And then Portland gave up on him. And he went to Indiana. And I don't even remember if he was I think he was traded to Indiana. And he ends up being an all-star. And maybe not the best big in the league, but probably top 5 for most of his career.
Yeah, really good. I mean, really good.
And it's like you take the chance on developing somebody with a ton of potential but isn't there yet. You don't want to be the team that gives up. Now, you also don't want to be the team that hangs on to Dante Exum for 5 years, convincing yourself that this guy's going to be a player.
Yeah.
So it's a fine line to walk.
Here's another way of measuring it, which is really just, did you play your rookie or did you not play your rookie? Which is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Did your rookie get minutes, whether they're earned or not earned?
They play.
And I
Keyonte played.
I can pull up the top 10 rookies who played in total minutes played. Brandon Miller was on the list, meaning all rookie team.
Yep.
Jaime Hawkins played the second most minutes. He made the team. Victor Wembanyama obviously made it. Keyonte George, we're talking about, just made it. Brandon Pajemski made it. Scoot Henderson did not make it. He played the 6th most minutes of any rookie.
Oh, yikes.
And did not make it.
Oh, man, it doesn't look good for that guy.
Tamani Kamara, who actually had a very good rookie season, kind of hidden. He was in the Yusuf Nurkic trade. Was in Portland and actually played really well. Bilal Coulibaly, did he make it? Bilal Coulibaly did not make it. He was the number 8 overall pick. Kaysen Wallace, the number 9th pick. The number 10th
minutes?
pick. Yeah, at number 9th in minutes, excuse me.
Yeah.
He was also the 8th in minutes and 8th in picks, speaking of Bilal. Kaysen Wallace did not make it. No, he did make it. He was second team. He played the 9th most minutes. And then Asar Thompson out of Detroit.
Yeah, you got to play to make it for sure.
Now, Asar didn't make it. His brother Amen did, and he played the 11th most minutes. So basically, the guys who didn't play a lot who did make it were Derek Lively, who was the 14th in minutes. He made the second team. And G.G. Jackson, who was the 45th overall pick, was the number 1 high school recruit, but didn't fit well at South Carolina. He ended up making the second team as well and played the 16th most minutes. But yeah, it's a little concerning if you're in that top 10 list. You got all the opportunity in the world, and you still didn't turn anybody's heads.
Indeed.
A la Scoot.
I told you that guy was all hype. Speaking of our conversation about actually being good and hype, that guy's all hype.
His numbers are not significantly different than Keyonte George. He had more points per game, 14 to 13, more rebounds, 13 to 12 or 13 to 3, and more assists, 5.4 to 4.4, and played fewer minutes, but played more minutes per game. So his numbers are higher because he played more minutes per game. He just didn't play as many games.
But I would argue that you don't want Keyonte George to play like Scoot.
No. And, he's got to learn to shoot better. Both of them shot very poorly, both under 40% from the three-point line, under 40% from the floor and 33% or under from the three-point line. So there's some real comps there. What's the big difference? If you don't hit on the 16th pick, it doesn't cripple your franchise. If you don't hit on the third pick,
expectations.
You're in trouble.
But also a role on the team. I mean, Keyonte couldn't come in and play like that because he's not the third pick.
Yeah.
He's got to exist in that locker room and probably listen to what the coach has to say. I don't know if Scoot has to listen to the coach. I don't think – I would bet on Keyonte over Scoot at this point, if that's what the comparison you're trying to make.
There's a real history of Scoot never shooting that does not apply as well to Keyonte.
And how tall is Keyonte?
Yeah, 6'3", 6'4".
Got an advantage right there.
We'll see. And again, if Keyonte doesn't end up hitting, it's not the end of the world.
No, it's not. All right, what's next?
Number 2, the NBA Conference Finals begin tonight.
Start every other night, or, every team plays every other night, but we're going to have basketball basically on for the next at least week and a half. There's a chance both of these series are relatively short.
There is a chance for that. The one that starts tonight certainly is going to be short. Now, yeah, again, maybe the Celtics do the NyQuil challenge before a game, like they've done in the previous 2 series, but I wouldn't. I mean, they can win in 4 if they want.
Yeah, and what they need to be careful of, and of course every team does, but this is when you're, again, the term playing with your food can come back to haunt you, which is every extra game is an extra opportunity to get hurt. And you can't afford to lose anybody. Whoever Boston plays in the next round, assuming they advance past Indiana, they can beat either Dallas or Minnesota.
They'd be the favorite over both, I'd say.
I think so too, but they need to be healthy. And they are already missing Kristaps Porzingis. They need to get him back.
Is he coming back tonight?
He's not coming back tonight. He's already been scheduled to miss the first few games of the conference finals, which is a bad sign because they said he was going to be back in the conference finals. And
they did.
I saw some video of him shooting the other day, and he was walking really, really weird. Like that calf is not healthy. So we may not see him again. And if he's not out there, I don't know if they can beat either Dallas or Minnesota. They really need him. He's really pretty crucial to what they do. But if he's back and he's healthy, and they're healthy everywhere, they've got a real chance to beat these other 2 teams.
You know what? It matters where you play. Going to Boston was a smart move for that guy.
Just, again, when we talked about building your team yesterday, order and where you are in the in the food chain.
And your teammates, do they compliment you? That stuff matters.
Yep.
He's a good fit there in the old Al Horford role.
Yeah, and old Al Horford's still playing.
Which is amazing.
Still has to play a lot, actually, because he's hurt specifically, Kristaps.
That guy won 2 titles at Florida in like the 80s.
Yeah.
I can't believe he's still playing. Joakim Noah, his teammate, has been retired for a long time.
He was not the youngest player on those good Atlanta Hawk teams with Mike Budenholzer as the coach and Paul Millsap and Kyle Korver.
No, he was a salty vet.
Yeah, he was he was the steady vet at that point. And he's still playing.
That was like 10 years ago.
Forever ago, yeah. So credit to him because he's found a way to be very useful. He's 37, 38. I mean, he's
like the Robert Parrish model.
Yeah, right. And he's still productive, so it's pretty amazing. Boston's really good. I haven't totally bought into Boston yet. I love their backcourt. I think you do too. With Derek White and Drew Holiday. They just need to get through this thing, be healthy, and be a little rested going into the finals. They'll have a good chance.
I don't really like what's his name, the boy wonder.
Jason Tatum?
No. The front office guy.
Oh, Brad?
Yeah, I don't like him.
Yeah, Brad Stevens has always been a little smarter than everybody else in the room.
Yeah, I'm not rooting for his success.
Okay.
But everyone else, sure.
Brad's always come up short, right, in his title hopes?
Yeah, I
Did it
mean,
at Butler
he was an
couple times at
average coach
Boston.
that weaseled his way into a front office. Now, I'm probably wrong about that, but that's how it appears to me.
And then cool for Indiana
Wonder
to
if-
be here. I can't believe they're there.
Danny is actually kind of he doesn't shy away from many topics. I wonder if he'll ever talk about that.
About Brad Stevens?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Maybe a little less. He's maybe a little less willing to talk about Boston.
That sort of thing.
I haven't heard him talk about it. At
I
least,
know.
So
And that's what I'm saying. He doesn't shy away from too many topics.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Number 3, Georgia quarterback Jaden Rashada has sued Florida head coach Billy Napier over an NIL deal.
wait, he's in Georgia now. This kid keeps. Well, I don't want to say falling up because he
Well, he bounced
ended up
around.
at Arizona State, but he's at Georgia now. Good for this kid. Okay, so we remember this. We talked about this a lot because this was the first time I think we got a real square number for an NIL player, right? And you and I were a bit aghast on the air that the 7th ranked quarterback in this class was getting $12 million. And there was this recruiting battle between University of Miami and Florida. And he was originally going to go to Miami, and then Billy Napier and the Gators boosters came in at the last minute and said, what if we give you $13.8 million? And he says, great, I'm going to eschew all my responsibilities at Miami, and I'm going to sign with Florida. And now he's alleging that the money he was promised had never showed up in the NIL deal.
You know what? I kind of like that guy is not going to be popular, right? I mean, there's not
Rashada?
going to, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's
He's not going to make the NFL. Like, this is his
But-
last chance to get money in the league.
I mean, like in this particular situation, people aren't really going to side with him, and I would argue that they should, because there's nothing like we always talk about how NIL it's the Wild West. It is, and that's a bad thing.
Yep.
There's not really anything out there that says that a coach can't go around promising the moon to all these people, and then they show up on campus, and it's like I don't know what to tell you. Like there's no
Yeah, it's all talk.
there's no boundaries. I mean,
Yeah.
I would guess like he will garner the headlines, but how many second string linebackers picked a university because they were promised a truck, and then
Truck never showed.
the coach was like, I don't know, man, that fell through. I don't know what
Well,
to tell you.
and-
Like how many times that happen? I bet it happens all the time.
Oh, I mean, talking to anyone who's ever played college football, they were promised something by a coach, whether it was playing time, opportunity, a number that they were going to get to
Yeah.
wear, and then you get on campus and like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's 85 other guys out here. No, we don't have the number 64 available for you. It's not there. Pick another number. Or don't play. How about this? Leave. We don't want you on the team anymore. Like, that's so common for players that I'm sure it will trickle into the money.
Because we
aspect.
get focused on the stars and the coaches that have to, pucker up and kiss butt just to have them around. But what about the other players on the team, the other people who are just trying to build a life and are promised certain things and make huge life decisions now based on things that shouldn't matter, in my opinion, but now obviously really do,
This is from the CBS Sports
and then
article.
get totally ghosted?
At the crux of the argument are the actions of Napier, Hathcock, and his company. Hathcock's a big donor at Florida, and his company Velocity Automotive, as well as Castro Walker, convincing Rashada to pass on the previously agreed upon $9.5 million NIL deal to attend Miami in favor of Florida. Rashada committed to play football at Miami in 2022 under the terms of that deal, but the lawsuit alleges that Florida employees and boosters never backed off in their pursuit of the talented Pittsburgh, California product. It includes allegations that Hathcock told Rashada whatever Jade needed to come to Florida, Hathcock would make happen. It also alleges that his father, Harlan Rashada, was told he could get a job in the security industry during a recruiting visit. Direct contact with a recruit during an on-campus visit by a booster is against NCAA rules.
Oh, yeah. Well, what does that matter anymore?
To sway Rashada's decision, Hathcock and Castro Walker had offered $13.8 million in the deal, with $5.35 million, including a $500,000 signing bonus to come through Hathcock's Velocity Automotive Company.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the player.
I actually am too.
And, people, it's funny, people that have advocated for NIL or paying players or whatever for a long time will be the first ones to jump on board and say, well, this kid's just being greedy, which is hilarious to me. But this stuff matters. What you tell these recruits, what you're selling to these recruits, you better deliver and there's no guarantee that you will. There's no system. You know, even these collectives are run by faceless people. We have no idea who they are. They could promise the world.
Well, that's the big problem. So this guy was going to wire essentially this money to Rashada through his business, and then he decided to sell the business, so the money wasn't there anymore. So, yeah, you don't know who you're talking to. Yeah, okay, yeah, I sell...
We've opened the door to all these sleazy car people. No offense to the good sleazy car people out there.
I sell third-hand mattresses. Third-hand.
But I've got my foot in the door because I'm bribing this kid.
And I'll tell the coach, I'm going to give your kids $2 million. And the coach is going to say, well, in the off chance he's right, absolutely, yeah. I'll let him in the door.
Now there's all these cooks in the kitchen that are getting Lord knows what for their payment. And it's like, good work, everyone. Way to go. Way to just ruin something that wasn't broken.
We're going to have players and parents that start charging a fee to talk to the kid in the first place.
Oh, it already happens.
Fee.
No, that already happened.
I'm not going to even come out there unless I get $150,000.
That happened before NIL even became a thing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's like you want to...
an application fee. Essentially like an apartment.
What's the story? Larry Kraskowiak talked about it. He was... I can't remember the actual figure, but it was like $10,000 just to get a visit.
Yeah. You're going to get...
Like, you want me to come visit your school? Well, that's going to...
$500,000 application fee for these players. It's going to be crazy.
Which is great. I mean, congrats to everyone who won.
But I put your little logo on my
is so
top
much better.
5 recruiting graphic that I had AI create in 30 seconds.
It's so much better than it used to be.
I got $2.5 million for having the top 5.
Great. You know what bugs me is, like, in our haste to not do it the right way, like to not legislatively go through it, and to not, if there was indeed reform, to just, instead of doing it the right way, advocating and balancing and doing what's supposed to make this country great, we just bypassed it and found a loophole and jammed it through because it was easy. And now we're left with this absolute mess. A mess.
Yeah.
And I would guess young people are getting hurt by it. You think, we
just read a story about a guy getting hurt.
You think all of these guys have money in their pockets now. How many stories are out there about where they get hurt? If for no other reason than they let somebody into their life because they're waving cash around and all of a sudden you're involved with who knows who. Mm-hmm. You know? It's crazy. It's crazy. I hate it. Sorry, end of rant.
No, this is exactly what we predicted would happen.
Yes.
We talked about this exact situation, and we haven't even gotten to the kids not paying taxes and a kid who's a first-round draft pick going to jail because he hasn't paid taxes on his NIL money.
And listen.
And that will happen too.
Here's what bugs me about rhetoric, or some people's rhetoric, is it was always sold the kid that has to eat top ramen in his dorm room can't even sign an autograph for $5. That's what everybody sold it as. Like, well, let Johnny Manziel sign some autographs for crying out loud. That was never going to be just it. It's never going to be like, and I brought all these up. Like, what about it? It will never be pay for play. It's just, giving them $5 for every jersey that they sell. And it's like, it's not going to be used that way.
It was never going to be Jimmer Fredette on campus signing autographs for 2 hours to make.
That's what they sell.
To make $600.
Because that tugs at your heart.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, that's not fair. Poor Jimmer.
Right.
And then you just stuff a zillion cats in the wall, and then you go, why is this whole house meowing?
We need another cat. That's what we need.
And to your point, it's not like this hasn't been happening for a long time. And the people in charge knew this was going to happen because Spike Lee made a movie about this happening called He Got Game or Blue Chips.
Or whatever.
So long ago that was exactly about like, hey, man, I can give you this watch. I can give you all these things like I can give you women. I can give whatever you want. We can get it for you. Just you got to commit to this school. Or the warden will let your dad out of jail if you commit to big state. Like, this has not been a secret that's been all that well hidden. So, yes, the idea that we'd ever keep it hickory high, sign in your notebook, sign in your yearbook for $3 after class was never going to be realistic.
And we're way over, but whatever. And it's particularly offensive because they never did anything about it because they didn't want to. And it doesn't mean that like the old principles of the old system were wrong. It's that it was corrupted. And I never understood why it wasn't prosecuted legally, honestly. You can't just hand somebody $50,000 That's not legal.
Well, I don't want to set that as a standard that we're not doing. Because if somebody wants to hand me $50,000, I will let that be legal.
Since when is that okay? People just overlooked that. They were like, "Oh, I heard a story about Ben Anderson. He got a suitcase full of $150,000 from a collegiate skateboarding program."
The blatant,
you can't do that.
The way I would blatantly speak about how stupid coaches were whenever there would be a phone call or a paper trail of any kind when they were recruiting. It's like, well, yeah, you can't have a paper trail. It's like, no, you're not addressing the issue. Don't be mad that there's a paper trail. You shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
You shouldn't be doing it. That's a sign.
But it was obvious that it was like, you moron? You used a check? Are you stupid? You got to use cash in this situation. Anyways.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll have more coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you about our friends at Peach Doors and Windows, Utah's premier door and window retailer, combining beauty and technology on doors and windows since 1993. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. Jace Frederick is going to join the show, Ben, coming up in the next segment. Covers the Timberwolves for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. That's a lot of P's right there. It's an alliteration. No?
It's crazy to be talking about Minnesota this way. Minnesota has just been the worst team in all of sports, the worst franchise in all of sports for a very long time.
Well, no, I think they're the favorite to go to the finals, and we'll see what happens when they get there. But
I put out my listing of where I think they're probably the favorite to win it.
Yeah.
I think they're the best team playing right now, or they've played the best of all the teams remaining in the playoffs. Maybe I'm sleeping on Dallas beating OKC. I wasn't that impressed by beating OKC.
No, I'm not.
I know they were the number one seed. They're young. They've never been there. A lot of their guys actually really did not play very well.
It's soft.
Yeah. There's a lot of issues. They've got a lot of work to do. Again, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. They have a ton of pieces to work with. OKC's got significant room to grow. They are very similar to where the Jazz were after Donovan Mitchell's first season, where they've got to go and add those veteran pieces to come in and fill the gaps. The nice thing is they can get it wrong. The Jazz couldn't really afford to get it wrong because they really only had one move to make.
Jace joins us coming up next. Want to give one more invitation to people to use our call-in feature on the KSL Sports app. We're doing a bit today, if you're just joining us, that we want to get this thing off the ground. We want to interact more with our listeners. This is a great way to do it. Download the KSL Sports app, click the call-in button, and you can record up to 60 seconds of audio. It goes to Christian in the control room, and we're going to dedicate our entire last segment to it. And we're doing complaints. You can complain about whatever you want. Complain about sports, complain about life, complain about Ben. Just download the KSL Sports app, hit the call-in button, and send it to us. Christian said we've gotten a pretty decent response so far, but we need to add more. I want to have a bunch of voices on this thing. So record it and send it in. More next, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
I took a walk around the world to ease my troubled mind. I left my body lying somewhere in the sands of time. But I watched the world float to the dark side of the moon.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Time to talk a little Western Conference Finals. How about that, Ben? Joining the show now, he covers the Timberwolves for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. He is Jace Frederick with us here on Jake and Ben. Jace, thanks for a few minutes. I understand practice is about to get started.
It's fastly approaching, yeah. But thanks so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
So I don't want to say this run is unexpected. I think before the season we talked and I had said I thought Minnesota was going to host a first-round playoff series. Conference finals is a different conversation, and going into the conference finals is, I think, really maybe an argument is the best team in basketball right now. For somebody who lives in Minnesota, how has the town responded? How has the city responded, and where are people with this basketball team?
Yeah, it's on fire, frankly. Like, this is oftentimes like the Vikings rule the state, and then, like it's kind of a split between basketball and hockey. But frankly, like, this town just kind of looks for a winner. Hasn't won a major men's pro championship since '91. Haven't been that many close calls since then, frankly. So, like, people get behind a championship contender, and this team is the first one that they've had here in quite some time. So, like, I think there are even like some hockey fans who are becoming basketball fans at the moment, things like that. Like, everybody is very fired up about what this team has done.
All right, Jay, so you're talking to two people who covered Rudy Gobert's entire career in Utah. I remember, his the day after he was drafted in the press conference and all that stuff. So I was fascinated to see how Minnesota would use him, because we certainly are familiar with what a unique a player he is, but how effective he can be. And I guess my question is about Chris Finch and how he's chosen to use Rudy Gobert, because I think it's brilliant. I think Rudy's playing better, hot take here, better in Minnesota than he even played here in Utah. So I'm curious to your thoughts on how Chris Finch has evolved Rudy into the lineup and how Rudy is playing now.
Yeah, part of the benefit, I think, is just the number of perimeter defenders Minnesota has. I just remember a couple of those Utah series where, Royce O'Neal is the best perimeter defender, and no knock on him, but he's not like a high-end perimeter defender anyway. So Minnesota has so many different pieces that they really can kind of play like chess defensively at any point, given what the opponent can do. And oftentimes for them, that is like putting Rudy on the other team's worst player, and having Rudy just totally be that free safety who can kind of patrol the floor, and that can mean like calling out coverages, and that can mean just being that kind of final line of defense where, like, yeah, okay, if you get past Jaden McDaniels, now you have to beat Rudy Gobert at the rim. And if you're getting past Jaden McDaniels, you're probably not doing it with a straight line drive, full head of steam. So Rudy, like, it has maximized Rudy's impact, and they're just not afraid either to switch up coverages to kind of use Rudy a little bit more like a Swiss Army knife. Like, it's not just like drop coverage Rudy Gobert here. It's however he can best be utilized, equipped, weaponized really to slow the opponent down. Like Dallas here, like Rudy will probably be more up on the level in pick and roll, which I know is not something he did much in Utah. So they're not afraid to ask Rudy to do different things, and they have so many other pieces that they can really kind of morph defensively in what they want to do in any given game.
I think what's amazing is the narrative around Rudy Gobert has just so dramatically shifted. And look, there are still guys like Draymond Green who are always going to try and push a negative front for Rudy, but everyone recognizes how valuable that trade has been now for Minnesota within, and a crazy turnaround in 12 months. How much of that is due to Mike Conley's impact and what he has done to the team since he's gotten there versus D'Angelo Russell?
It's massive. And like, I would say that Mike is probably their second least replaceable player behind just Ant, just because, and you saw in Game 5 of the West semis, like, they need that perimeter playmaker, and they also need that decision maker, the guy who's getting them in the right spots, making sure their head's always in the right place. If teams are loading up against Ant, well, now we can just run a Mike Rudy pick and roll and generate good offense there against a non-stack defense. So Mike is incredibly needed, but like just the general shift in accepting of Rudy, and like, because so often I think just the perception for NBA players is just this guy sometimes airballs free throws. This guy sometimes like blows layups. Like, this guy's one of the best players in basketball. This guy's making this much money. That doesn't make sense. So when you get a guy like Mike who just fully understands everything about the game and is like, here is what Rudy is doing that is making your life far easier. Yes, defensively, he's saving your butt on the back line, but also offensively. Like, do you see how hard he's rolling? Do you see the guy that's sucking in from the corner? Do you see that that's why you're wide open? Do you see these screens that he's setting for you to make your pass to the rim 10 times easier than it should be? Like, everybody, I think, has realized, oh, okay, yeah, Rudy Gobert actually does a ton for us. He's a great player. And then when that's the case, now you trust Rudy more. Now you're like, I'm going to give him the ball in the roll because he's earned it. And I think Mike has just opened everyone's eyes to, like, here is what Rudy Gobert is doing for you guys that you're not noticing on a daily basis. So pay it forward, too.
What's Ant like in his day-to-day interactions? What kind of personality is he? We see, I loved his post-game with TNT after Game 7. Him talking about defense really rang my bell. But what's he like in day-to-day interaction?
It's pretty good. To be honest, like he's not the biggest fan of always doing media. So like sometimes after practice he's like, really? But post game he's always there to chat, and he's pretty like even when he's done, like he'll sit there and you can BS with him or whatever for a couple minutes, or he'll dive a little bit more into like what was happening. So he's pretty good with us even on the local level on a day-to-day basis. But there's no question that when he knows like it's national, when he knows like it's a post-game press conference, it's going to be seen everywhere, like he dials it up another notch. There's no question about that.
I hate to do this because it's kind of the problem with NBA culture right now, but truthfully the CBA and the financials require it. Right. How long is this window open for Minnesota? And I will say this because everyone in Utah is watching, hoping this roster falls apart so the draft picks end up being very valuable for the Jazz in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's probably at least another year. The only person who's in the rotation right now that, unless they decide to go a different direction, will not be on it is probably Kyle Anderson, and that's we're looking at guy number like 8. So I think this team should probably have another year together, assuming that it doesn't fall apart here. I'd be surprised. They'll have to eat a big luxury tax bill this next season here as all these extensions for Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns kick in. So like they'll have an expensive roster, but it's one they can keep together at no cost. Like these guys are all signed in, so next year should be pretty good too. And then it's more of like tougher to re-sign guys, tougher to like okay, are we going to eat that bill again? Obviously, if you're winning championships, you'll find more ways around it. But yeah, even under the CBA, they can keep this together for a while because these guys are all kind of signed long term here.
So I couldn't help but laugh when A-Rod was front and center in Denver. And I realize I'm asking you a question that you could probably answer in about a half an hour. But take us through the ownership drama and where we stand now and exactly why it's falling apart.
Yeah, the exact why is kind of still a little bit unknown. Like the other side with Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry will tell you, like, oh, Glenn's having – like seller's remorse and look at how good the team is now. And of course, and he could sell for a lot more money. And of course he'd try to back out of this. And Ben Taylor's like, no, these guys missed these X, Y, and Z on the contract. And in my mind, then that it's just done. That's kind of what will be litigated as to did they miss stuff? And is that enough for somebody to then just call off the deal? They've gone through mediation and that was never going to solve anything. It's going to head to arbitration. At that point, like I think we're looking at later in the summer. Like that will not be a thing that is played out whatsoever. I think here for the rest of the playoffs, from my understanding, like that will be post NBA finals. So I don't expect any news on that for quite some time here. But then what'll be interesting is even if arbitration goes in the direction of Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez, which I would not be surprised if it is. Usually, like there aren't too many hard set dates where like, oh, you missed this by a day, you don't get the team anymore. Just in terms of like the spirit of these contracts. But then they'll still have to be approved as like majority owners by the NBA, by the Board of Governors. And Glenn Taylor's got a lot of friends there. So if there's like a September vote after Lowry and Rodriguez win in litigation, like I don't know if that's a dunk either. So this will be an interesting thing to play out over the next few months that has some layers to it. But I think right now we can focus on the basketball, knowing that stuff is a little ways down the road now.
Jace, where are the Minnesota Timberwolves in the pecking order of sports in Minnesota? You talked about it obviously being a Vikings town, and they just won a winner. But when you have 4 major league franchises like that, and with all due respect, the Timberwolves have been the worst franchise in all of professional sports for a long time. Like, do they have a foothold, or is this just kind of like a new thing people are excited about?
Honestly, every time they're good, Target Center is full. It just hasn't been very good. I would say in the general pecking order, it probably does go like Vikings, Twins. Twins just dominate summer generally. So I would say they probably have the second most ardent fan support here. And then it really is coin flip between the Wild and Wolves. They are just kind of like two separate fan bases. But like runs like this, if the team has success, it will be so easy for them to jump up to number 2. And we've kind of seen that here with the excitement. Like a consistent winner, any consistent winner would slot in right behind the Vikings, and the Wolves look like they're on their way to that.
I think the Oakland A's would like to talk with you about the worst franchise in sports, Ben. There's a lot of bad ones out there. Give us a tale of the tape on this matchup. How do you see it?
I do think that the edge probably goes to Minnesota just in terms of like total roster, but Dallas presents a little bit of a different defensive issue, just in terms of like the shooting, the way they can spread it out. They can put 4 shooters out there. Luka Doncic is, even though Minnesota has like a Jaden McDaniels, like it's a lot more now just like pick and roll, and Rudy's got to be up at the level, and then like, okay, if they get it to Daniel Gafford behind Rudy, who has to play up at the level, how can Minnesota hold up there? Kickouts, like I do think Dallas will generate some good looks, and if they shoot like they did against Oklahoma City, they can give Minnesota some problems, and they can score. And certainly they've been really good defensively since they retooled their roster. Like I think at the end of the day, that Minnesota probably has too much for Dallas, but I think Dallas, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this game goes deep, and if Dallas makes a real run at winning it. Dallas has Derek Jones Jr., who can maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they try to like play Ant more honestly than Denver and Phoenix did, because Jones Jr. is probably the best perimeter defender that Ant has seen yet in these playoffs. So we'll see what Ant is able to do to that if he makes Dallas kind of shift their mindset. And also, like, Dallas has actual rim protectors, which neither Phoenix or Denver did. So Minnesota's going to have to shift a lot of what it does defensively, or what it took advantage of defensively and offensively. So it'll be a pretty interesting beginning of the series here, just to see how things play out and which team forces the other to adjust.
He covers the Timberwolves for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. He is Jace Frederick with us here on Jake and Ben. And Jace, thank you so much, and prepare yourself, because we're going to bother you often as this run continues.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. There you go. That's Jace Frederick. Again, covers the T-Wolves. Follow all his series coverage at the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And we appreciate him taking some time for us.
The windows in the NBA are they're so short now. You got to win. You're not going to fall in love with your roster like you did with John and Carl for a decade and a half. It's not going to happen. And I still think I see a lot of, fans on Twitter talking about the Jazz and how you build this thing up, or the idea of like how you get to fall in love with this team. Because I wrote an article yesterday on how like it's really a good time to be a small market fan in basketball. It is. You look at 6 different champions in 6 different years. Toronto, Denver, Milwaukee have titles. There's a good chance Minnesota or Dallas gets a title. And Dallas isn't a small town by any means, but they're not the traditional power in the NBA that, is the Lakers or the Celtics or even the Bulls, I guess, in the 90s. So it's a good time. There's more opportunity, more realistic pathway to get there, but you don't have 10 and 15-year runs, obviously. I mean, you don't have 5-year runs. And that might be one of the flaws that the Jazz have had, where I've heard the narrative is they don't just want to be good, they want to be good for a long time. It's kind of one of the things that Justin Zanuck has said a lot with this process, and they want to wait to strike until they can be good for a while. And that doesn't mean, the number one front runner as a contender for 5 straight seasons, because we're just never going to see that again.
Oh, yes, we are. We're seeing it now.
With who?
Boston. They've been good forever.
They've not been able to break through, and they are this one team that is kind of squeaked in at the very end of this old CBA that is going to be broken up by the new CBA, and I don't know if anyone's going to rebuild it. We'll
see, sure. But it is happening now. Boston, and they haven't broken through, whatever. There's only one title.
Right.
Boston has been good for like 10 years.
They made 3 straight conference finals. They're the only team that's done that, and they've made 4 of the last 5.
They made a playoff run Jason Tatum's rookie year, and they've been good since.
Mm-hmm. 5 years ago. Well, I guess 6 years ago he was in the Donovan Mitchell draft. So, yeah, that they are kind of the team that is as close to a dynasty as there is right now in the NBA.
Don't use the word dynasty. That's not what we're talking about.
Close to a dynasty
you said get good, stay good. I believe it is possible. Now, the effects of the new CBA are absolutely a thing, and you don't know what all those are all the time. But at the moment, I think you can set a goal to get good and stay good. You draft or acquire the right players at the right age, and you hopefully it works, and you win, and you reward them, and all those sorts of things that can lead to people being happy and well-adjusted with where they are.
But even then, I think we're talking 5 years. We are not talking 8-year runs the way, LeBron went to 9 straight finals.
I don't know.
And
maybe
whatever.
Owners are greedy and creative. I mean, you wouldn't have thought they would found a way around the old collective bargaining agreement, which was way more draconian than the previous one.
This one's significantly more even than the last.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But okay.
So, well, you're right. Maybe we will see.
Ryan Smith's worth like $9 billion.
Nothing I am seeing looks like it's going to be possible to do.
The Lakers are printing money. Those sorts of rules don't apply to them. Or they currently don't. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, how much is Golden State's team costing them this year?
Like $330 million.
They don't appear to care.
No. They're also not any good.
And they probably didn't lose any money, though. But we're not talking about being good.
Yes, we are. We're talking about building dynasties, being good for a long time. That's how the conversation started.
But that's not the point I'm making. I'm not saying Golden State is currently an example of what we're talking about. I'm saying that Golden State has as much money as they want. And so you can create rules and say, this is going to be this times this and this times this. They don't care.
They don't.
They didn't lose money because they're charging so much for tickets in downtown San Francisco. Combine that with the TV money, and they don't care.
Yeah.
Let alone the money out of the owner's pocket. So why do I think they're going to care about this new CBA?
You're right. There's not a hard cap that will prevent you from being able to spend as much money as you want.
They'll find some way around it. I mean, they're creative with it now. I remember I didn't think that LeBron was going to Miami. I didn't think that was a thing at the time. Because it was, somebody had mentioned it like a day before the decision. Because everybody thought the decision was so out of the blue. Somebody had reported it like that this could happen. It was like that. I don't know if it might have been Stephen A. No, Stephen A. Smith was Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember talking about it on the show, and I said that's not going to happen because Miami can't afford it. They can't sign those players.
Right.
That's not going to happen. They can't do that under the cap. And you know who made me look dumb? Miami.
Yeah. They found a way to get it done.
Yeah, they just traded the whole team, and they didn't care. I mean, it didn't cross my mind that they would just flush assets all down the toilet overnight, that was even possible, so they could barely get enough money to sign 3 players and then fill out the roster with the worst minimum vets you've ever seen. Their starting point guard was Carlos Arroyo. I didn't think that was possible. Pat Riley proved me wrong. So they're creative. I don't know.
I don't think cores in the NBA will look the way they do now. Meaning, what I think they're going to reflect more of, and a good example of it is what Dallas is, where you have your superstar. You hope to have your top 5 player, and as long as he's on your team, you have a chance to be very good.
Yeah,
and the truth is that's what Boston is doing. They've got Jason Tatum, and you can throw Jaylen Brown in this conversation as well. And then you're going to have to be really creative moving the pieces around them, and you're going to have to hope that team has a really great season, but I don't think you need to have great rosters anymore. Because of these last 5 teams that have won the title, and I'll try and do it off the top of my head, the Lakers have one, the Warriors have one, the Raptors have one, the Bucks have one, and Denver has one. How many of those were like great rosters?
Yeah, right. I get you. I get what you're saying.
I don't think that's the thing anymore. Whereas Golden State, obviously, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, yada, 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 all-time great roster. One of the great rosters of all time. I don't think that's what we're going to see anymore. I don't think we're going to see great rosters. You're going to see what we saw from Denver last year, top 5 player with a bunch of great supporting pieces for one season, but it's not this like crazy run, and we're already talking about how they're going to have to move Michael Porter Jr. or something to retool around them.
But that's always been true. I mean,
that's always been part of what you're doing.
Like that's something new.
No, but you're not going to have trading for Jeff Hornacek in 1994 and he retires in 2001. Like, you're not going to have, you get Dennis Rodman, he sticks with the team for 4 years. I don't really see that happening. I think Minnesota's going to be relevant as long as Anthony Edwards is on the team. But 2 years from now, how many of these guys that are on the roster now are still going to be there? Very few. You're going to always have to retool around those guys more than you ever had before.
But in John and Carl's run, how many different teammates did they have? I mean, you mentioned the Jeff Hornacek thing, but the whole team changed.
It did. It
like
retooled
multiple times. And those two were the only constants. I don't think this is anything new.
You don't think it's as novel as I'm presenting?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe you're right about a lot of things. But like people come along and say, TV's going to put radio out of business.
Let's hope not.
I mean, people have been predicting the streaming thing for as long as I've been in this business. Yeah. And last I checked, you can still call up Ryan from the Dish Pros. Mm-hmm. Hey, on top of that, cable was going to put broadcast networks out of business. It did not. So I don't know. But I do know that you have pillar players, and the rest of the roster always flips. Now, it was different. I'd say a collective bargaining adjustment that had more of an effect on what you're talking about. And again, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah. New rules, new situations. But when they shortened max contracts from 6 to 4, that really changed a lot. And LeBron, and I don't know if this is good for the league, but he showed that you can sign one-off contracts and not care if you get hurt, and you're still going to make your money, which is different than it used to be, where these players would sign these big long contracts because
on the off chance you had.
if you got hurt, you were never going to get another contract. LeBron proved that at least your rep can be good enough that he could have a devastating injury and sign a max contract
Kevin
the
Durant
next day.
signed a max deal on a torn Achilles.
Right.
The fatal injury in the NBA.
So no longer do you have to, and I guess you never really have to or had to, but no longer is it really a priority to sign a really long contract. In fact, it can work against you. LeBron's made way more money doing the one-off stuff than he would have signing a long-term deal because he's immediately reacting to the growth of the revenue of the league as opposed to dialing in on projected growth or growth at the time or whatever it is. LeBron's been able to take advantage, and not to mention hold franchises for hostage so that they do what he wants.
Mm-hmm. He's also been done more for player empowerment when it comes to player movement than any player in NBA history.
Well, I don't know. I can't remember in the NBA who the first NBA free agent was.
Tom Chambers, right? Well, I think
Is
Tom
that
Chambers
right?
was the first one
Was
who.
he
I mean,
the
there was
first
the
one?
big lawsuits about like, hey,
Well,
we get to change teams.
I'd argue Tom had more to do with it then, but yeah.
As
I
far
get
as
your-
star players not thinking loyalty is the end all be all. Like, I'll go to Cleveland to Miami to win. Absolutely,
and honestly,
that's easier.
I don't know if that's good for the league. But whatever, it is what it is. I think get good, stay good is a good thing. I don't think, the NBA has been all about dynasties and the NBA has been popular. So I like the league better like this personally.
So do I.
Than dynasties. But I do think like the 90s, for example, there were more really good teams, or at least it felt like it. Like the Bulls were the best, sure.
Yep.
But we'd laugh at the Hawks. The Hawks never got over the hump. Those Hawks teams were really good. Kevin Willis was really good. Dominique Wilkins, Mookie Blaylock, Steve Smith, those were really good teams, and they were a run-of-the-mill Eastern Conference team.
Yep.
It's not like that anymore.
No, and I think that's what I'm saying is this idea of like these long-term rosters who you're going to recognize 3 year, 4 years out of a time is just not going to exist anymore. Where I can go back and say, well, yeah, Mark Jackson and Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley. You go down the list of these great Knicks players that stuck together for a long time. I just think we're going to see it less and less to the point where we have Jace Frederick on, and I say, hey, how long is this thing going to stay together? Because Rudy has a player option next year. Naz Reid has a player option next year. Kyle Anderson's going to leave this offseason because someone's going to pay him. It's like,
and if Glenn Taylor were Jeannie Buss,
maybe
he would keep it together.
Maybe.
If it was in L.A. and not Minnesota, they'd figure it out. You better believe they'd figure it out. The league would figure it out for them. But I don't think, if we're talking about how the Hawks don't exist today, the Hawks of the 90s, I would also argue that that's because franchises' mentalities are totally different when they were
different.
then. Would they have blown the Hawks apart and started over from the very bottom in 94 because they didn't think that they were going anywhere?
Yes.
There's no patience anymore.
If that roster existed today, absolutely.
And so because the incentive of the league is no longer to be as good as you possibly can, it's either to be great or awful.
Yeah.
And so is the incentive to be in the middle gone, why we don't have more better teams that stay together longer? Because we don't have any patience. Oh, man, second round exit, huh? Well, you got better blow it apart.
But that's where I wonder if it is changing, where you are no longer needing great rosters to win titles. Like I said, you need to have a good team that has a great season and not a great team. Does that make sense?
No. You need a great team with a great roster to win it. It's true. There are just fewer great teams with great rosters because there's no incentive to be the fourth best team in the league.
See, and I disagree. I think we are going to have more teams that start to resettle into the middle class because you're having fewer rookies make big impacts early. They're going to say, hey, let's go in the middle and let's see if we can have a great season and put it together and win, which is a little bit more of a 90s perspective, even though if we aren't building teams the same way. I think we're going to start seeing that a little bit
more. If it were 1995, the Jazz would never have blown apart Rudy and Donovan.
No, they wouldn't have. The Jazz are still on the tanking end of it.
And I'm not even saying that that's the wrong strategic move because I happen to think it's the right move. I just don't like the system. And the system hasn't really changed since the 90s. The money's changed, and so the incentives have changed.
Yeah.
And I don't think for the better. I don't know about you, but I actually liked watching players that were supposed to play in games.
Absolutely.
And I thought the 90s Hawks were a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun series and all those sorts of things. And those teams just don't exist because there's no incentive to. Because you better either be dead stinking last, and just ask the Jazz how much criticism they get for not being dead stinking last. Yep. You better be the worst team that's ever suited up on a basketball floor, or you better be winning the title. There's no more in between. That's an incentive thing. I don't know if that's a rules thing.
No, that's an incentive thing. You're absolutely right.
But I'm really curious to see the outcome of this conversation, like the new rules and what they do. And I hope for the Jazz sake that you can get good and stay good. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Alex Kirry joins the show next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson
1, 2, 3, move it.
on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Spread your love and fly. 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 All around the world, statues crumble for me. Who knows how long I've loved you? What were you saying?
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I want to remind you about the Hercules Hero of the Week. Nominate the sports volunteer you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest. Listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules Credit Union. Speaking of JJ and Alex, joining us now, co-host of that fine program, the one and only Alex Kirry. What's going on, Alex?
Fellas, happy Tuesday.
Appreciate you jumping on with us, Alex. We got into not an argument, but a discussion about the latest with Jaden Rashada. And if you haven't seen it, he was the quarterback that was supposed to go to school in Florida, ended up at Arizona State, is now transferred to Georgia, and is suing Billy Napier and the Florida Collective for backing out on a $13 million payment that they tried to get him to take to not go to Miami. I'm glad we haven't seen more of these, but it feels somewhat inevitable to me. Is this kid just trouble? With all due respect, I try to not paint anyone as a bad kid but he's gone. He's had these issues everywhere he's gone, and it seems like he's just trying to go wherever someone will pay him. But now he's got this lawsuit because he's not starting or whatever it is. Are we going to see more of this, Alex? Is what I'm asking.
I mean, his situation's really weird because it was the very front end of the weird parts of NIL. Not that they've totally figured anything out. We're going to see more issues. We're going to see more issues because you're going to have kids who thought that they were worth more than they were, and schools who thought that they were worth more than they were. And the real problem is going to be when a school comes around and starts asking for maybe money back that guys felt like that they should have not gotten, right? That the collectives feel like that they weren't worth. So the reality is that a guy like Jaden Rashada, because what is there was like $13.5 million there. And then there's the $1 million that he's asking from Billy Napier for, because he apparently said that he was guaranteeing that money to his dad, to Jaden Rashada's dad, when he was going to sign. See all of these complications that are a part of it. Are we going to see it more? Yeah, because kids are going to ask for money and there are going to be lawsuits. The question is whether or not, these schools are going to feel like they're going to actually have to pay them out, and they probably won't. Because the reality is it's the Wild West, and it all felt like it was under the table, especially at the beginning, more than it was. And so that's what you're going to end up seeing. It's just weird because there's no real contracts. There's no real ways to be able to kind of enforce any of this. And so, especially now. So you're going to see some of these contracts. And the other thing is that there's technically no pay for play still in college. So there's no pay for play. And so technically paying a guy for NIL is just paying him for being that person.
Who you liking in the Western Conference Finals?
Oh, just going just exactly how we thought it was going to go, right? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what to think of the Timberwolves. But I'm going to go with them. Vegas says them, so I'm going to go with them. And they have all the momentum. They're the ones who beat the world champs. So I'll go with the Timberwolves.
Alex, sorry to jump around. I know we're bouncing around a little bit. One of the big storylines that has kind of emerged is that no one is following Mark Pope to Kentucky. I know Colin Chandler did, but of all the players, he's the one who knows him least, right? Like, Colin Chandler's never played for Mark Pope. but a lot of these guys are actually going to Louisville, like over Mark Pope. Do you make of that there's something against Mark Pope? Is it that you actually have a chance to play at Louisville and they may not have a chance to play at Kentucky, which, by the way, is not an insult to BYU that your players are not as good as the players currently at Kentucky or transferring to Kentucky? It's kind of a different level of basketball. What do you make of it?
I want to know why these guys are ending up at Louisville when there's seemingly no tie there versus it's like Mark Pope's going to Kentucky. We're going to Louisville, and it's like, why there of all the places? I guess maybe because the playing time would be there. I don't want to totally dump on Mark Pope, but there were some issues there, right? I mean, there was stuff that was unseen with Mark Pope that I think that a lot of people didn't necessarily know, and you find out that kind of stuff not because guys are trashing him. But, yeah, I mean, if I'm a BYU guy, quote unquote, and I have the chance to go to Kentucky to follow Mark Pope, I still don't think that I'm going to get much playing time. You know why? Because it's freaking Kentucky. And most of the guys that Mark Pope would be getting at BYU were those 3, maybe 4-star guys. And I wouldn't have all the confidence in the world that I would be playing very much if I'm a 2 or 3-star guy who initially was going to be going to BYU. It's Kentucky. I don't know. And there's turmoil. The reality is any coaching change is turmoil in college basketball. So whether or not that means it's a solid situation or not, I don't think it is a solid situation just because it's a brand new coaching situation at Kentucky. And Kentucky is a wild place to try to, throw your hat in the ring and beat a guy out to play at Kentucky. I just never would want to go into a situation like that if I wasn't sure I was a 4 or 5-star guy.
Well, as long as we're bouncing around, we might as well hit on the Jazz. I'll ask you this, Alex. What are the percent chances of the Jazz making all 3 picks they have in the NBA draft coming up?
Hey, why not? Let's sweeten the pot even more and say, what are the odds that they only take 3 picks or that they only make 3 picks? Because I could see some moving around. At some point, don't you want to see a ton of movement? I mean, at some point, don't you want to see some aggression? And, last year they had 3 picks, right, that they were just there and they were theirs. I think that I'm hopeful that there are things going on behind the scenes that I don't know about. I mean, when there are rumblings out of the combine, do we believe any of them? I mean, let me ask you guys that. When there are rumblings out of the combine, Ben, is it just all fake? Is it just all because when they go, no, this is a garbage draft, and then they get to the combine and rumblings out of the combine are that it's a garbage draft? Do you believe any of it?
No, and I don't think people can resist, even at the top level, can resist falling in love with the idea that this person might be a savior. Even if it's the number 1 pick who they know is not going to be Victor Wembanyama and that's not there this year, someone is going to still say, but what if? What if it is this guy? And that happens every year. And it's going to happen every year regardless of the quality of the draft.
Right. So what are the actual picks that they have? They get, do they have on the books 32 and then 60 and 65? Or what's the actual numbers that they get?
So the Jazz have, the 10th pick, the
10th pick,
29th pick, and the 32nd pick.
And then 32?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the 32nd pick is technically a second-round pick, right? Isn't that what that – okay. So do you want anything after 10? Is there anything desirable after 10?
Well, here's the funny thing. I don't think this draft is any different than every other draft after the top 5. That's the kind of flaw about calling something a bad draft. Just because the top 5 players aren't as good as they were last year doesn't mean 6 through 30 is 5 spots or 10 spots worse than what last year's draft was. It just means the top 5 wasn't as good, and then it's fine. The draft looks just like every other draft. It's good players with good size at the top who have some flaws that they're going to have to overcome to become good players. But I would say the same thing about Taylor Hendricks last year and every draft before that.
Okay. So I think we all know – I think we all are absolutely holding our 2 fingers up like the cross. Remember the old, no, don't do it for Bronny James Jr., right? So I don't think that there's any planet where we would want to see Bronny in Salt Lake. For the value of being a good basketball player, right? There's no and I don't want it. I don't want him here for any other reason either. So I'm going to go package those two, package your 29 and 32, because 32 is what they're, or 29 or 32 is what they're saying where Bronny would go. Package 29 and 32, move up to like a 15 or 16 with that, and the Jazz only get 2 picks. That's what I think is going to happen.
All right, Alex, we appreciate you. Thank you for dropping by.
Yeah, man. Anytime, guys. Every Tuesday, whenever you want, JJ and I will be here, man.
Yeah, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Alex.
You bet, guys.
I could see the Jazz at least making 2 picks and trying to package together, obviously 29 and 32, to see if you can get up to 23. If there's a guy who they're just saying, like, take a flyer on another top 10 pick, high upside guy who might be a couple of years out, and then if you think there's a guy who could actually step in and maybe play right away, and obviously there are names like Zach Edey out there that can probably play tomorrow. I mean, he's 7'4" and he weighs 300 pounds, and he's played 4 years at Purdue. He's not going to win you a title, but he can probably step in and be a cheap roster option, and you could go that direction if you feel like that guy's out there that you want to play. I could see something like that.
I don't see them adding 3 rookies.
No, 3's a lot.
3's a lot for 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
It might be something as boring as though they trade out.
The most likely scenario is either they trade out, consolidate, and then the third option would be making all 3 picks. But yeah, absolutely. I think they try and keep this asset alive by kicking it down the road and trading this second-round pick for another team's second-round pick, and their second first-round pick for another team's first-round pick in the future.
Excruciating as it may be, and I guess you brought this up, but having a high pick in the second round now that the draft is 2 days, maybe you have time to parlay that into more value. Maybe there's somebody on the board a team didn't think was going to be on the board, and they're desperate to get
Absolutely
up and get in
right.
whatever, and you've got a whole day now to swindle that person. Maybe that's good for Danny Ainge.
On teams like Denver, who need to improve and only have the ability to improve on the fringes and don't own draft picks because they've, of course, traded them to get all these veteran players and all these picks that they have, can really use the 32nd pick because it's a negotiable contract, so you can fit it in under your salary cap however you need to, or even the 29th pick. Like, those have value actually to good teams that need to find ways to bring in the guy who can contribute immediately.
All right, we're trying to use the call-in app more. We're trying to get it in your brains, the listeners, to interact with the show with the call-in app, and we called for your complaints. We're going to play the good ones coming up next. Stay tuned. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two niggas on the airways, talking sports. They got it made Jake's and on soul. Loves this tie guy, Ben's got style with his scarf. Oh my.
Jake and Ben, 50 segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows, Utah's premier door and window retailer, combining beauty and technology in windows and doors since 1993. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Also want to remind the fight fans out there, the Professional Fighters League is making its debut in Salt Lake City, June 21st at the Huntsman Center, with jaw-dropping knockouts and lightning submissions. Every fight promises to be an adrenaline-fueled spectacle. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. All right, Ben, we've got a new call-in feature on the KSL Sports app. We want to make it a part of the show. We want to interact with our listeners. We set it up today. Send in your complaints. Now, we used complaints we got before 11 because we had some downloading issues. So if you submitted after 11 and you don't hear your voice, very sorry. But we've put together a few. You ready?
Sure.
Christian, you ready? All right, let's do this thing.
Okay, so this is the last week of school, and I thought, well, I got to clean my school bus. Want it clean for the summer. So I pull over. I go in the car wash. I wash the whole bus. The skies were blue, and now as I'm looking over the sky in Utah County, some blasted cumulonimbus or whatever the cloud is called is dropping rain, and my bus is going to get ruined. You wanted to share bad news? That's my bad news.
I'm tired of all the traffic in Saratoga Springs.
Hi, I wanted to call in and complain about Jake Scott. This morning he did not make the coffee strong enough. I woke up this morning, I went and worked out, got back to the house, was ready to pour myself a nice big cup of coffee, and what do you know? It tastes like water.
What's up, Christian? P1 Robin here, man. Wanted to talk about the state of the Jazz. This is my 5th rendition with this team, starting with Dantley, Griffith, Frank. Then I went on to the glory years with John, Carl, and Jerry. And then we had the Darren Williams, Boozer. That was a fun team too. Memo, AK. I really enjoyed that team. Now we had Donovan and Rudy and Conley, and that was just way too quick. And now we're rebuilding with these kids. The salary's so outrageous. I struggle with the NBA in general. Just pro sports is just, they make so much money and they take so much time off. It's hard to pour my heart into it. So what the hell is wrong with my Utes basketball team too? Why do we suck so bad? I just need my basketball fix. I'm always a Jazz fan, always listening, and appreciate what you guys do. Keep it up.
Love your show. Appreciate the local coverage all day. Able to listen to it. Do not like the national show, so keep it up.
All right.
Hey. One of those was oddly specific about your morning.
Yeah, strange to recognize that voice. Yeah, it was really watery.
Bad coffee?
It was not good.
Huh.
It was my fault. I just didn't put enough in.
Yeah. Better to go too much than too little.
I loved the bus one.
Oh, the cumulus nimbus? Yeah, absolutely.
I loved the bus one. I'd be so bent.
Hey,
Here come the clouds.
I thought that was...
Of course.
I don't spend much time in Saratoga Springs. I hate traffic everywhere. So I think absolutely right.
Oh, talk to Hans about... or Hatch. The traffic in Saratoga is apparently a thing.
But, and I have real sympathy for Jazz fans and Utah basketball fans. And if those are your two things...
Yeah, you're a basketball fan, and those are
your teams
right now.
It's not great.
Rough.
And I think one of the things he's talking about, and something we teased. Speaking of Robin, shout out to Robin, that we talked a lot about in the first segment is like, I think we're gonna have a hard time bonding with these teams the way we used to. I just think we are.
Yeah.
And you're gonna really have to fall in love with the team with the name on the front of the jersey. And one of the things Jazz fans are, while they are extraordinarily loyal to the Jazz, they have always loved the names on the back of the jersey.
Yep.
Always. Always, always, always. John and Carl. He mentioned Jerry. He talked about all the players through AK, Memo, Boozer, Darren. And the last one was too short. And I wonder if it's just going to continue to get shorter and shorter. And if that's going to be hard to continue to make fans using continuity as a real strength.
Hans and Scotty G are coming up next. Thanks to all those listeners, except for one, for weighing in there. Appreciate it.
Make better coffee.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.